Hi guys,
Hey,
I'm Alena
I'm Mateus.
and welcome to our ICE assembly. Today we're thinking about the theme of identity.
Yeah, that's such a big topic these days. Sometimes it feels like everyone knows who they are and has their identity sorted. So how can we know who we are?
I like to think about it like this. If you were a detective and you have an unknown person in front of you and you want to know who they are, then you would ask questions to them. For example, what their name is. And did you know names have meanings? Like, for your parents, they maybe choose your name because they like the sound of it, or the special meaning, or I don't know, it has a special significance to them. Did you know your name, Mateus, means gift from God?
That's cool. And your name, Marlena? Let's have a look. It means star of the sea.
Does it mean I'm Patrick?
Maybe. So have you ever thought about the meaning of your name? So why not take a few minutes just to share the meaning of your name with the person sat next to you? If you don't know, just ask your teacher to have a look up for you for the meaning of your name. And also, just think about the question, do you think the meaning of your name is true for you?
So clearly, names are important. But let's get back to an analogy of a detective. Because names only tell me so much. I want to know, where do people come from? So let's ask the question, where do we come from?
I wonder what you think. Where do we come from? According to the Bashongo people in Central Africa, before we existed, there was nothing. There was darkness, there was water, and there was their god, Bumba. And they believed that one day Bumba had a really bad stomach ache and he vomited up the sun. So the sun evaporated some of the water, which created land. So they had sun, land, and water. And then Bumba threw up again, and he threw up the moon and the stars, the crocodile, the leopard, and finally human beings. On the other end of the scale, modern science would say that where do we come from? We evolved from the apes. But I wonder about you. What do you think? Our answer to that question affects how our society is set up. So in the UK, we have a justice system, we have an education system, we have a health service, we have a democratic government. Why? Why do we have all those things? Where do our laws come from? Why do we think in the UK it's important for every child to be educated? Why do we think that everybody is valued and Therefore, everybody is entitled to healthcare treatment. But an even bigger question is, where does our sense of right and wrong come from? Why is it right to educate everyone? Why is it right to treat everybody? I don't know about you, but I have definitely said, "That's not fair," several times. Maybe some of you have even said it this morning. We have this sense within us about when things are unfair, when things aren't right. Where does that come from? We don't all have Jiminy Cricket sat on our shoulder like Pinocchio did in his film. But we do all have a conscience. We do all have something inside us that helps us to decide what is right and wrong. And how strong that is depends on how we have acted, how we have been treated in the past.
Okay, so we thought about where we as a species came from, but how about us individually? What makes me, me?
Where do you come from? I wonder what comes to mind. Maybe you're thinking, well, the answer to that is fairly obvious. I come from my parents, my mum, the person who gave birth to me. Maybe you're thinking about the place you were born, the place you grew up perhaps. So I want you to have a think for a minute about what you think it is that makes us who we are. Sure, family and DNA and location, the place we grew up, that all comes into it. But what is it that makes us who we are? What comes to mind when I say the word identity? For me, there's a whole host of things. I think about my experiences, my background, and my core beliefs, my values, my personality. There's loads of things that come to mind when I think about who I am. Imagine each person here has a box labelled me. The box represents you, and what's inside the box represents who you are. Now each box is going to be different. It's going to have different things in it. No two boxes are the same, and nor are they meant to be. We're all unique and different, and our differences make us who we are. Maybe sometimes we can feel a bit unsure about some of the things that have ended up in our boxes. Maybe we don't like everything that's in there. That might be our background, our experiences. Maybe someone has said something unkind to us about who we are, and we've ended up carrying that around in our box. And actually that can feel like it's become a part of who we are. However, the good news is that you have a choice as to what goes in and what stays in your box. You don't have to let negative stuff into somewhere that it doesn't belong. At the beginning, I asked you where you come from. And where you come from, your background, your experiences, those things are important, but they don't have to define who you are or where you go from here.
A lot to think about there. Why not discuss with the person next to you how to answer the question, where do you come from?
Okay, so we talk about our names, their meanings, and where we come from as well. All that is great to help us understand our identity, but I think there are other factors too that will help us with that.
Yeah. See, that's all things that have happened to us, but we also have a choice in our identity. Who do we want to be? So let's think about the question, who do we want to be?
What kind of person do you want to be? Do you want to be the kind of person who helps people? Who changes the world a little bit? Maybe your world, maybe your life, your family life, maybe this city of Exeter, maybe the whole UK, maybe the whole world. Maybe your life, you're just like, I want to be the kind of person who really makes a difference. And if that's you, me too. That's the kind of person I want to be. That's the kind of person I try to be. And if this is the kind of person you want to be, this is the kind of thing you want to do with your life, then a great place to start is by being humble. Nelson Mandela, who led the anti-apartheid movement in South Africa and became the country's first black president, he once said, "The first thing is to be honest with yourself. You can never have an impact on society if you have not changed yourself. Great peacemakers are all people of integrity, of honesty and humility." Being humble is about treating other people better. It's about saying, this person's happiness is really important, and therefore I'm going to sacrifice some of my happiness so that that person can be happy. And as we practice humility, we start to become more humble people. Just in the same way that if you practice something for 10,000 hours, you get really good at it. If you practice humility for 10,000 hours, you get really good at it. So as we practice humility, we become the kind of people who, when given the opportunity, will help people. Because that's what we've trained ourselves to do. The difficulty is that our pride so often gets in the way. Part of being humble is about admitting when you're wrong. It's about owning up to your own mistakes. And it's about congratulating others when perhaps they even beat you in a game. And having too much pride is destructive. And maybe you've seen that in your life. I mean, I certainly have. I used to play a lot of sports back in uni, played loads of football tournaments. And after each game, no matter if we won or lost, we'd say well played and good game to the opposition. It's just what you do. It's called good sportsmanship, but it's also part of being humble. It's about acknowledging that the other team played better than you in defeat, or about being humble and gracious in victory. Now, one of the teams we played against in this tournament was one of the most violent and aggressive teams I've ever played against. And in the end, we thrashed them. But at the end of the game, they just stormed off the field. They refused to shake anyone's hands. And two of our teammates weren't happy about this. They wanted to practice humility. And so they went over to this team who were pretty much in an argument shouting at each other. And they said, well played, good game. And they made sure they shook all their hands. They believed that this was a really important thing to do. And so they made sure they did it. In that scenario, we have people who are trying to be humble, and we have three people who are so full of pride that they almost can't. Now, which of those was easier? It was definitely easier to storm off the field in that situation. And it was a lot harder to go after them and say well played. But I think we all know what the right thing to do was as well. Now, I'm a Christian, and therefore my main role model in life is Jesus. Jesus talked all the time about the importance of being humble, but he also practiced humility. There's one occasion where Jesus was announced as king, and he's kind of coming into Jerusalem, the capital city of the place he was, and he's coming in to say, I am the king. Now, when kings do this, they come in one of two ways. They either come on a war horse with a whole army around them, and they come in to dominate. They come to say, this is my city now. I am the king now. You will do as I say. But Jesus doesn't take that option. He takes the other option. He rides in on a donkey. He rides in humbly. What he's saying is, my kingdom is a kingdom of peace. It's a kingdom of love, and a kingdom of humility. When my king is humble, that challenges me to be humble as well. So this week, I would love you to practice humility. Practicing humility is important, because if we want to be the kind of people who help people in the future, we need to practice humility so we become that person. Or if you just don't want to be a proud person in the future, then we need to practice humility so we don't end up like that. Whatever the choice, I want you to practice humility this week.
Okay, so last discussion point for today. who do you want to be and what kind of person do you want to be.
So that's the end of our assembly, and we really hope you enjoyed it and got to thinking a bit about your identity, who do you want to be and what makes you you. Yeah, see you next time.
Bye.
Bye.